Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time. This is Masechet Shevuot, and today is our third class, and we are going to be reviewing Daf 14 through 20. Excuse me. Okay, so the Gemara, we ended off last week discussing the different sacrifices that are brought on Yom Kippur. So we mentioned the goat, that is what we will call the inner goat. There's a nice picture of the goat next to my face on the slide. So the inner goat, the goat that's brought into the sanctuary, the blood, it's blood. So that needs to be paid for by the nation, and therefore it atones for everyone in the nation. The ox the high priest is going to bring, that Kohen Gadol brings, is brought from his money, and it atones for only his family, or maybe it atones for all of the Kohanim. Right? As we know, all the Kohanim are seen as the Kohen's family. Okay, excuse me one second. Okay, so the Kohen Gadol actually says his repentance. So when he does it 2 times on his ox, and then he sprinkles the blood, and this corresponds to the goat that is brought inside for the rest of the nation, and the goat that is brought outside also for the rest of the nation, and the goat that is sent all the way out, which is La Azazel, and therefore it is parallel. The ox atones for the Kohanim, and the goats atone for the rest of the nation. And with that, we finish the first chapter of Masechet Shevuot. Now we're going to start the second chapter. So if you remember, we said that having knowledge about becoming impure and then going into the temple or eating sanctified food, we began last time and say in the beginning of the Masechet, we said there are 2 which are really 4, right? Shtayim shehem arba. So now we have to understand what this means. So we say, or we said in the beginning of the Masechet, and we're going to say here again, that you need to have awareness in the beginning and at the end. You forgot somewhere in the middle. And then you're going to bring the korban ole v'yored, right? The korban that is variable, that is going to go up and down depending on how much money you have, that you can spend. So again, what are these 2 that are 4? So also, just as an aside, if you remember, the first perek had all the mishnayot in the beginning. We're going to have that again in the second perek. So we're going to do all the mishnayot first, and then we're going to go through the Gemara. So the Mishnah says that he became impure, he became tameh, and then he forgot and he went into the temple, or he then ate sanctified food, and then he remembered that he was tahor, that he was tameh. That's when you bring this sacrifice of the ole v'yored. Or maybe he remembered that, but he forgot that he was going into this area and he forgot that this is the temple area, right? Maybe he was distracted, maybe he didn't realize, or he forgot that the meat was sanctified. So that's 2 that are really 4. If he goes into the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, or even the addition to the courtyard, this is problematic. How do we add to the courtyard? So the Mishnah says that the only way to add to the courtyard of the temple or to Yerushalayim is if you had the king, the prophet, the Urim the Tumim, the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, plus the Sanhedrin, right, the Supreme Court, plus 2 korban todah, 2 thanksgiving offerings, and all of Israel, and they're going to walk around with all of these things. Now we said korban todah, the Thanksgiving sacrifice. This was actually made with many loaves of bread. So the Gemara, the Mishnah tells us that the inner loaf, we'll see what that means, the inner loaf was eaten and the outer loaf was burnt. Now, if this process didn't happen the way we just mentioned, so then the area is not sanctified. And then if you are impure and you go into this area, so then you're not liable. If he walked into the courtyard while he was pure, while he was tahor, but then he became impure while he was in the courtyard, and then he forgot, or he forgot that he was in the temple area, and then he bowed down when he realized, or he waited the amount of time it takes to bow down. So then he's liable for the korban olev yored, for the sacrifice. But if he walks out right away, then he is exempt. Okay, those are all the Mishnayot. Now we're going to go through the Gemara. So the Gemara says 2 which are 6, meaning we just said 2 that are 4. So now the Gemara says, no, it's 2 that are 6. Knowledge of impurity before and after, and then knowledge of the Mikdash, and then, right, again, before and after, and then knowledge of the sanctified meat, right? So really it's 6. The Gemara says, no, the first, or maybe it's even 8. The Gemara says, no, we don't count the first 4. We only count the last 4. And yes, you need to have knowledge or awareness before and after. What if you forgot all the laws of purity and impurity? And let's say you don't know if you touched an impure item, right, like a sheret, like an animal, and you're not sure what you touched and how much you touched. Is that called a lapse in awareness? So the Gemara says we're not sure. Teku. Then we're actually going to have a few. Then the Gemara says, let's say a person didn't know where the temple was. So according to Rebbe, you needed to have knowledge in the beginning. And then, what would that be? The laws. Daf 15 tells us that 4 generations, when you wanted to add sanctity in the temple or in Yerushalayim, you have to do as we just mentioned, right? You needed this, and it's learned from when the Jews were in the desert, right? Because when the Jews were in the desert, how did they sanctify the area? They had Moshe, who's the leader, Aaron, who's the priest, and the 70 zkenim, the 70 elders. So that is the king, the priest, and the Sanhedrin. But for the vessels that you wanted to sanctify, in the desert, you needed to anoint them with oil. But for future generations, you only use them, meaning you use them, and that's the way they became sanctified. You did not anoint them after the generation of the desert. Okay, we said that you needed 2 korban todah, right? 2 sacrifices. The type is thanksgiving, todah. So this refers to the bread of the sacrifice. Actually, there are 2 parts, the bread and the meat. So the Gemara says that when the Mishnah says you eat one and you burn one, that's talking about the loaves. So you take 2 out of the 40 loaves that you have, and what happens? So actually, Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah is right when the Jews came back, what's called Shivat Zion, when they came back to build the second temple. So Nehemiah describes that they used loaves to sanctify Jerusalem, and it says 2 large todot, right? So because it says large, it must mean they were talking about the bread, not the animals. Ezra also describes, this is the same time period, Ezra describes how they sacrificed with leftover grain offering, and he talks about what they used and how they used it. Then the Gemara talks about how they would walk around. So they would sing the song of thanks, right? The Shir Shel Todah, which is Perek, chapter 100 in Psalms. And they would do it at every corner of Jerusalem. And they would bring instruments. They would also sing Mizmor Shir Chanukat HaBayit, which is chapter 30, and they would also sing chapter 91. And this was because Moshe said the Seter Elyon when they built the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. Therefore, they said it as well when they were sanctifying Jerusalem. Okay, so the Beit Din, the court, would walk around, and there would be 2 loaves of bread from the Korban Todah, and they would walk in front of the court. Now, there's a machloket if the 2 loaves were side by side or one in front of the other. Now, if they were side to side, I can understand how there's an inner one and an outer one, right? One is on the inside of Jerusalem, and one is on the outside of Jerusalem. But if it was one after another, what does it mean, inner and outer? So the Gemara explains, inner means closer to the court, to the Beit Din, and outer means further away, right? Again, the inner one was eaten, and the outer one, the further one, was burnt, right? And the idea is, as they're walking, the outer one is sanctifying it, right? If it's in front, and the inner one is inside the whole time, therefore it could be eaten. And Daf 16 tells us, right? Or maybe both of them are sanctifying it. And either way, right, the inner one is eaten and the outer one is burnt. Now there's a machloket. We mentioned a lot of things that need to happen to sanctify Jerusalem. So the Gemara asks, do you need all of these things or only one of these things, right? That's the machloket. So now the Gemara explains what's really behind the machloket. Maybe you need these things because the first time that they sanctified the temple in Jerusalem, that kedusha, that sanctity, lasts forever. Therefore, you don't need to re-sanctify it again. And therefore, when Ezra and Nehemiah came, they didn't need all of these things. So it was okay that they didn't have all of them, and therefore it was valid. Or maybe you need only one of these things because the first sanctity wasn't forever, and therefore Nehemiah needed to re-sanctify it, and the only way to re-sanctify it is with one of these things because they didn't have all of those things when they were sanctifying Jerusalem when they came back during Shivat Zion. The Gemara now describes, since we're talking about extending Jerusalem, so the Gemara describes that there were two marshes on the Mount of Olives, on Har HaZeitim, which is across the valley of Jerusalem, meaning of the old city. And the Gemara explains that the lower one was sanctified with all of these things during the first temple, but the upper one, right further up the mountain, was not sanctified, and therefore it was only sanctified when they came back with only some of these things, and therefore the Gemara discusses what could be done in each area, right? Each area is partially Jerusalem, partially not, and therefore you had to be very careful what you were doing in both of these areas. And basically the Gemara describes that the lower one is seen really as part of Jerusalem, but the upper one isn't really part of Jerusalem. Okay. So since we're talking about Shivat Zion, right, the return to Zion, and how they were building the temple, the second temple, in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. So the Gemara discusses how they built it. So it says that they put up curtains before they actually built the walls. And therefore they put a curtain around the inner area where the building was going to stand, and then they put up curtains around, basically around the courtyard, and they would build right on either side of these curtains, right? And it shows, and then the Gemara says that they actually brought sacrifices even when there were no curtains, and that shows that the sanctity was there forever. Or maybe not, maybe it says that they needed to put up the curtains in order to sanctify the area. Okay, so now the Gemara says, we were saying that you cannot go into the temple when you are impure, and the Gemara searches for the verses to prove that this is indeed prohibited. And we said that if you became impure while you were inside, you needed to leave right away. And if you don't, you're liable if you stayed an extra amount of time. So the Gemara says, what is this amount of time? So it's the amount of time it takes to bow. Now the Gemara discusses different ways to bow, right? So the first way is what we call kriyah, right? If you, right, if in the tefillah of Aleinu, it says, "V'anachnu korim umishtachavim." Right? Korim means to bow down, where you just bow, you just bend your knees, as opposed to hishtachavaya, which means you're actually prostrating, meaning lying down with your hands and legs out. So the Gemara says, right, it depends which type of bowing, right? Obviously, one takes longer than the other. Another type of bowing is called kidah. This was a very special type of bowing. It was actually very dangerous, where you were standing straight, and then you kind of fell, what we would call fell on your face, and that, like, without bending down and going on your knees first, dangerous. That Bathsheba actually did this type of bowing down. Okay, so now the Gemara asks a number of questions. I'm going to tell you right now that there's no answer to these questions. Each answer is teku, right? We're not sure. And we have to wait till Eliyahu comes and tells us the answer. So Daf 17, so now we have 4 questions. Let's say he found out he's impure and he waited and then, right, and he didn't leave right away. So he has to bring the korban olevi ored, the sacrifice that we mentioned in the beginning. But does he get lashes as well? So the Gemara answers teku. Next, what if he suspends himself? Don't ask me how, but he suspends himself in the temple, and he can't bow down, but he stays there for the amount of time it takes to bow down, right? Is he liable? Again, teku. What if he became tameh on purpose? Again, beforehand we were talking about if it was bishogeg, right, accidental. But what if he did it on purpose? Is he liable, or what is he liable for? Teku. Last question. A nazir. If you remember, the nazir is not allowed to become tameh, right? So someone who stays in the cemetery who's a nazir and he stays there on purpose, does he get lashes? And again, this is called, right, we say teku. Let's say he went out, but again, back to the impure person in the temple. Let's say he went out, but he took the longer way as opposed to the shorter way, then he's liable, right? There's a shortcut. He didn't take it. He went out the long way. So he is liable because he went out the long way, right? Even if he walks slowly out the short way, that is okay because he took the short way. What if he walked and then stopped and then walked and then stopped? If you combine all the stops, that could make him liable. Let's say he ran, but he went the long way. Is it about, so the Gemara asks, is it about the time it takes, or it's about the distance, meaning you have to go out the shorter way, but you can walk slowly the short way as opposed to running the long way. As you can see, right, the Gemara is getting into the nitty-gritty of what exactly he needs to do. Let's say the Kohen, right, the priest, became impure in the courtyard of the temple, and then he stayed to do an avodah, to do one of the services of the temple, but then he ran out the short distance. So the Gemara tells us that he's not liable for karet because he ran out quickly, but he is liable, what's called mitat bidei shamayim, right? God is going to give him the death penalty for doing service when he was impure. Or maybe the case is that as he was running out, he turned the meat on the altar. That's right, and it didn't take any extra time. Then maybe he would not be liable. Okay. Then the Gemara talks about the roof of the courtyard. The roof is not part of the courtyard itself. Therefore, if you are impure and you climb onto the roof of the courtyard, right, you climb into the courtyard via the roof, so then you are not liable because you didn't come in the normal way. Okay. Then the Gemara continues and talks about now the Gemara is going to get a little, I would say, a sensitive issue, since we're talking about doing something improper or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you have to leave right away, and if you don't, so then you're liable. So the Gemara now compares it to a man who's having relations with his wife, And while they're having relations, she says, oh no, I just became a nida, right? I just started bleeding. So the Gemara tells us that really that what is the man supposed to do at that point? He is not supposed to leave right away, as we would say. Rather, he has to wait till his member, what's called in Hebrew, the ever is met, meaning it is no longer hard, and he has to wait till that goes down, and then he can leave, because the idea is that if he leaves right away, there would be more pleasure. So therefore, he has to actually wait till there is less pleasure, and then he comes out. So it's interesting because the Gemara basically says that these are the opposite, right? In the case of the man and the woman, he actually has to wait a longer amount of time and then leave, as opposed to our case in the temple, where you have to leave right away. Then the Gemara discusses on Daf 18, what is the case actually with the man and the woman? Meaning, was she expecting to get her period? And as we know, if she's expecting to get her period, really they should not be having relations at all. This is what's called a veset. Veset is when a woman is expecting her period. When I say expecting, it means within the next few hours. And there are ways to calculate this. If she's expecting her period, then in those 12 hours, they are not supposed to have relations. And therefore, if they did, that is very problematic. And therefore, the Gemara says he would actually be liable to sin offerings, 2 korban chatats, one for entering her, right, because he wasn't supposed to do that, and one for leaving because she then got her period, and then he would be liable for both of those things. And the other option is that we're talking about where she was not expecting her period. If that's the case, so then he would not be liable for entering, because he could have relations with her because she wasn't expecting her period, but he would be liable for exiting, for leaving. So that is the Gemara on Daf 18. I kind of summarized that. And then the Gemara discusses not only are they not supposed to have relations when she's expecting her period, which is the veset, but there is a stringency that they also should separate for the 12 hours before she's expecting her period, meaning what's called ona. Ona is the 12-hour period, meaning sunrise to sunset, or sunset to sunrise, meaning day or night, before the veset, before she's expecting her period. And then the Gemara says that if you separate from your husband, right, if the husband and wife separate for this ona, if they are stringent, then they will merit having male children, or children who will become judges in the future. Another thing, if you make havdalah, this is not connected, but if you make havdalah on wine, you also merit having male children. Okay. Next, let's go back to the person who becomes impure. The Gemara says that you need to know how you got impure, what type of impurity you came in contact with. Now, then the Gemara says, when you normally bring a korban chatat, a sin offering, even if you don't know what type of sin you did, you can still bring a sin offering. But here, in this specific case, you actually have to know what you touched. Or, right, the Gemara says it's a machloket, and maybe you do not need to know. Okay, Daf 19 tells us that if you were what's called mitasek. Mitasek means you were totally distracted, and then you ended up coming into the temple. That is not called inadvertent, meaning shogeg, and you are not liable for mitasek. Again, mitasek means totally not aware that you're doing anything. That is not, you would not be liable for that. Okay, again, the Gemara says, if you didn't know that you were impure and that you were entering the temple, is he liable? Meaning you didn't know both of those things. Remember, in the beginning we discussed not knowing one of those things. You didn't remember that you were impure, or you didn't remember where the temple was. But here, what if you don't know both of those things? So Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer say you're not liable if you didn't know that you were entering the temple, and therefore he is liable if he didn't. And then the question is he liable if he didn't know both? So the Gemara says, yes, you are liable because he is impure and he's in the temple. Therefore, you are liable for both. Now the Gemara gives a different case, and this is a very, I would say, popular case when we're talking about safek, which means doubt, right? So the case is that you're at a crossroads, and now there are two paths you can take. One, right, and you know one of them is impure and one of them is pure, meaning there's maybe a dead body buried on one of them, but you don't know which is which. And now, let's say you went through one of them and you didn't go to the temple, and then you went through the second one, and then you went into the temple. So now you're liable because you know that you went through, right? Because if you went through both, you definitely went through the one that was impure. We just don't know when. But if you went through one, and then you went into the temple, and then you went through the purification process, and then you went through the second one, and then you went into the temple, now you're also liable. Or that's a machloket, or maybe you are exempt because you did one at a time. Now, when you went through, so again, the first case was you went through one and then the other. So the Gemara says, what's the case? When you went through the second path, you forgot that you went through the first path. And that's what's called partial awareness. And now, because it's partial awareness, you didn't realize it. So then it's a machloket if partial awareness is called awareness, right? Is that enough awareness? And therefore, you would be liable, or no. And then you went through one, then you became pure, then you went through the other one. Why are you liable? Again, maybe, right, it's just a doubt. And then, and here, again, this is the machloket. If you are not sure, if there's a doubt, is that called awareness? Or no, it's not called awareness. And that is the end of the second chapter. Now we're going to start the third chapter. Now, sorry, one second. Okay, sorry. I literally just got sick like 10 minutes ago. I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. Okay, we're now going to begin the third chapter. And now we're finally going to be discussing the concept of Shevuot, of oaths. Okay, so now if you remember, we began our Masechet already, right? This is our third week. So 2 weeks ago we started. So now the Mishnah said there are oaths that are 2, that are 4. Okay, so what does that mean, 2 that are 4? So we have, I will eat this in the future. I won't eat, right, this bread in the future, and I ate the bread, or I didn't eat the bread, right? All of those start with I swear that, right? So you take an oath either that something will happen in the future or something already happened in the past. Okay, so that's two that are four. Now the Mishnah explains, I won't eat, right? What does that mean? So I won't eat this bread. So if he did eat liable, that's according to Rabbi Akiva, and he therefore he has to, if he did it by accident, he brings a korban or levi or red, right, the sin offering. Chachamim say, the sages say, no, you need to eat a certain shiur, a certain amount, a kazait, right, an olive amount. You can't just say if you ate anything, because generally we don't say that, right? It needs to be a certain amount. So Rabbi Akiva answers, no, if you take an oath that you're not going to eat this bread, then even a little bit will make you liable. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain. So the Gemara starts by, we mentioned in Hebrew, right, it says she'ochal, right, that I will eat, right? So it means I will eat. But the Gemara brings another case that if someone says, I swear she'ochal, there's a case where it actually means I won't eat, right? The wording is Shevuot she'ochal lecha, right? I swear that I will eat from you. But the case is really, it really means I won't eat from you. So the Gemara explains, right? So then the Gemara asks, so which one is it? Does the word mean I will or I won't? Because as we will see in the rest of the Masechet, your words really matter. So you have to be very careful what you say. So the Gemara says not only do you have to be careful with what you say, but we have to look at the context, right? So if someone is saying, come on, eat the sandwich, come on, come over for lunch, why aren't you coming for lunch? And then you say, I swear, right, she'ochal lecha, right? So that means basically, stop bothering me, right? I swear I'm not eating with you today, right? That's what it means. But if nobody's pressuring you, then really the word means I will eat, because it literally means I will eat. Okay, Daf 20. Another opinion is that when you said she'ochal, you really meant to say she'i ochal, right? That I won't eat. And that's how it means I won't eat. Okay, now the Gemara mentions two words that if you use the words, right? So let me take a step back, right? I alluded to this in the beginning, right now, that there's this concept, right? If you say, I swear, right? So which you should not say, and you'll learn more about that in this Masechet, right? Whenever I find that people in English, some people are very quick to say, I swear to God. No, right? I swear to God. No, don't say any of those words. We do not want to swear. It's actually very serious. So obviously, it's clear when you say the word swear or Shevuah, it's very clear what you mean. But what happens if you use another word that could mean swearing? So now the Gemara says, there are two types of words that also mean an oath. The first one is mivta. Mivta means an oath. So if you say, right, the word mivta, right, mivta, this bread, so that means I won't eat this bread. Now, there's another word called isar, right? It sounds like isur, right? So isar is also a type of oath. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute, right? So if you say, mivta, this bread, it means I won't eat this bread. But if you say, isar, this bread, so it's not a standalone oath. Rather, it's saying that you're connecting it to an oath that you already took, right? And we're going to learn, or we'll learn it now, but we're going to learn it another time. This is the concept called hatpasa. Hatpasa in modern Hebrew, ladpis, means to copy, right? So hatpasa means I'm connecting this item with something that is already forbidden, right? So if that is forbidden and I want this to be like that, it means that I'm making it forbidden, right? So if you hold that connecting an oath is like an oath, and again, we're going to see this later on, because why would we see it in the beginning? It's more fun to not know till the middle or the end. But we're going to see that there's a machloket if connecting one oath to another is valid or not, right? So if you say it's valid, so then if you break it, you're liable because you just created an oath. But if you don't see it as connected, so then you are not liable. So the Gemara brings a source for both of these words, and from the verses it shows how each one of these is an actual oath. Either it's a real oath, or again, as I said, it's connecting it to another oath. Okay, let's say a person says, I won't eat meat or drink wine like the day my father died. And we're going to see that this is the source, that some people say that on the anniversary of the passing of a parent, there is a custom to fast. So here we see, right, let's say you say, today I'm not going to eat meat like I don't eat meat on the anniversary of this passing, right? Or let's say you say, I'm not going to eat meat like the day that Gedaliah died, right? This is the fast of Gedaliah, Tzom Gedaliah. Or like the day I saw Jerusalem destroyed. So then this is a real oath, and you can't eat the bread, or it only works if you took the original oath, right? If you originally took an oath that you weren't going to eat on the anniversary of a parent's death, so then if you took that oath and now you're making another oath and linking it to that, so then it works. But if you didn't take the original oath, so then you can't connect it to something that you didn't do originally. Okay, and then from here the Gemara says that you actually have to make a vow based on another vow, right? Not does that work, but actually that is how vows are made. And it's made by this connection to something that is already impure. It's something that is already forbidden, not impure. That was last chapter. Okay, let's say you say, I will or I won't eat. So if he doesn't keep it, so then it becomes what's called in Hebrew, Shevuot Sheker, a false oath. And therefore, if you warn him, right, again, the verse says, Lo tishba'u bishmi lasheker, right, don't use my name, God says, don't use my name when you are taking an oath. It means this type of oath. Now, let's say you say, I ate or I didn't eat, right, in the past. That's what's called a Shevuot shav, an oath that is in vain. Why? Or like nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. Why? Because as you say this oath, it's already either true or false, meaning either you ate or you didn't eat. So this is in vain, and therefore that's called a Shevuot shav. Or the Gemara says, right, again, because there are different verses that discuss a Shevuot sheker, right, an oath that is false, versus a Shevuot shav, an oath that is in vain. So here, the first statement was that they are different. Now the Gemara says, no, another opinion is they are actually the same thing. And maybe it means that both of them are for the past, or no, they are different, right? What does it mean that they're the same? It doesn't mean that they mean the same thing. It means that the prohibition was said at the exact same time. Like we know we have the concept of shamor and zachor in the 10 commandments. God said both of those words, right? Remember and guard the Shabbat, but because he couldn't, right? God could say it at the same time. We can't write it down at the same time. So therefore, it was said at the same time. The same thing is with these two types of oaths. They're different, but they were said at the same time. And since we mentioned Shamor and Zachor, the Gemara says, right, that's why what do we learn from the fact that they were said at the same time, right? We learned that a woman has the obligation to make kiddush on Friday night, because just she also needs to sanctify the Shabbat, right? Even though it's a time-bound mitzvah, and it's learned from this idea that Zachor and Shamor were said at the same time. Another opinion is that it's not that they were said at the same time. Rather, it's that you get lashes for both of these transgressions, either for a false oath or for a vain oath. But the Gemara says, wait a minute, why are you getting lashes for something that you're talking about in the past, right? You just said something and now you're liable, but there was no action, right? If you remember from the last Masechet, we discussed having to have an action, and that is what makes you liable for lashes. So the Gemara says, no, this is the one place where you get lashes, even though you didn't do anything, only because of something that you said. And with that, we are going to stop here and pick it up next time, discussing the distinction between a false oath and an oath that is in vain. I'm happy to answer any questions. It was a little complicated, but I hope that it was clear. So yeah, any questions?
It's not a question. You go home, you take a couple of grams of vitamin C, and you take some zinc, and you wash your nose out. It's a rhinovirus. That's why your nose is running.
Thank you. Yes. Bezrat Hashem. Bezrat Hashem.
Yeah, you want to be fit for Yom Yerushalayim coming up.
Yes, we have a lot of dancing coming up. Yes,
very exciting.
Hashem.
Yes, yeah. Yes. I can't bring a question because this is just too hard. This one was just. I mean, all of the nuances about when you are partially aware, you're not aware, you are aware, all that. It's like it's over my head, but first time going through it. So I'm really grateful to just do that.
But something, Lynn, what you figured out is you're aware, you're not aware. That's a major concept. You got that.
Yes, exactly. You have partial awareness at this point.
Yeah.
But not full awareness.
Talk about
go home and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm already home, so I'm halfway there.
Okay. Good night.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. And as Ilanit mentioned, Bezrat Hashem, Sunday night and Monday is Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim. So Bezrat Hashem, we should just celebrate only good things and be able to celebrate all together. And Bezrat Hashem, I will see you next week. Have a Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
God willing. Bye-bye.
I actually have a full-size, huge flag of Jerusalem. Bring that out every year at this time.
Wow.
Amazing.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.